Hey guys, I'm Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome to another episode of Dr. Sage in her sweatpants. I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm not. But what I have come up with is a really, I hope, helpful idea. It is the concept I'm calling mental health labs. And it is going to be these sort of mini courses, mini workshops that I used to do back in the day when I was earning my hours to be a licensed psychologist. And so what I'm going to do with this first one is going to be called Who Am I Really? And what we're going to do is go through 6 sections to explore from a mental health and psychology-based research, neuroscience, brain science, mindfulness sort of route into helping you understand sort of your childhood, how you came to be the person you are, with all of the ups and downs of that, and ways for you to know yourself more, accept your truth, explore what I'm calling mission statements in terms of how you see yourself in your life, and all of that I'm going to weave through mental health research and tools and techniques. So each section will have a lot of information and sort of just psych education, and then hopefully provide exercises in a journal or with a friend that you can do, or even take into therapy or log into with your therapist if you're doing therapy online. So this first section is I'm calling, really it's just you know how you go to class and you start with the vocabulary words. What is the language we need? So this first really module of who am I really and kind of who do I want to be, as I said, has those 6 sections. This first section is all about your childhood, really mothering style you received. Now I'm saying mothering style because that's where all the research was done. But what I'm really talking about is just your primary caregiver and your primary attachment figure. Now there's lots of information on the internet about attachment, but I don't see a lot of it in sort of this deeply psychological, trained, researched way, and how we use that in therapy to really foster growth in our patients. And those of us who also use a lot of other mental health techniques and tools, you know, how you can sort of kind of get access to what we do in therapy. Now, obviously this is not therapy, but I hope to give you a lot of data and information. And as I said, hopefully exercises that you can use to further enhance your sense of self and well-being in the world, and also to look at your mental health. So in each of these categories I'm going to be going into as I go into these sort of modules, I have a whole section on mental health specifically and how attachment relates to that, what you need to know and look out for. My goal is to always bring researched mental health information alongside more therapeutic information and tools. And so this first section is going to really just be the vocabulary around module 1 of childhood attachment. So it's just a glossary of attachment terms so that when I begin to present the attachment information, you understand already what those terms mean. I am going to link below another place you can find more information and resources, also some videos I've already made. I would like to grow this into some more significant workshops, but I figured now's a great time to just get going and start sharing with you guys, because I think mental health is really going to be at the top of our list of difficulties with everything else we're struggling with right now. Okay, so let's get started. Grab a pen, take some notes if you want. I will, as I said, try to link down below a little list of these terms, but let's start talking about attachment vocabulary really quickly. Before I do that, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell if you want more content, and you can get notified when I put out new videos. I'm going to try to amp my game up. I've been really working on this project for a while, so I took a little break, but I'm excited to just start posting videos with this very specific goal in mind. And like I said, what I'm calling mental health labs. So thanks for joining me, and let's get started. The first really idea that you might come across as we talk about attachment is this term of evolutionary ties. And what that really means as a term is that without attachment, we didn't survive. We know that with breastfeeding and babies and sort of over the course of time, infants that didn't attach didn't survive. And people that did not build close, safe, bonded relationships with one another probably didn't survive either. How are you going to be protected? And so as a result, our brain has actually developed an attachment system in order to create these stable, safe, ideally loving, connected, protective relationships. So evolutionary ties is the first idea. Now, let me just give you a little more research that really supports this idea of an attachment system. Back in the time of World War II, we know that there were many children left orphaned. And what we found in a series of studies, I'm just going to reference quickly, are that kids who did not receive anything more than just sustenance, like a bottle and a place to sleep, many of them died, many did not thrive, that we need human connection to thrive and survive. We've also looked at hospital studies where kids used to be sort of dropped off at hospitals. The reason why parents can now go with children into hospitals and why they allow for us to sleep in their rooms is because all the research has supported that children tend to be healthier and thrive and get out of hospitals faster when they have a close attachment figure with them. But the research showed that kids who were not given the basic needs in terms of affection and love and connection tended to really truly fail to thrive. They tended to have infections that lasted longer. They tended to not recover as quickly. And all the way around, they didn't seem to reach their full potential in terms of development in many areas. Another interesting little study was really Harlow's study on the rhesus monkeys, and basically what they did there was this is a whole ethical issue, don't get me started on this part, but this was a different time. They basically took baby monkeys and they separated them from their mothers, and they put them in these environments where they had two options to get food in their cages. One was a cloth with attachment to food, and one was a wire. And of course, the babies preferred, even over food, they preferred the warmth of the cloth and the material. And so what we know from that is that we believe that as human beings, we crave connection and closeness and intimacy. We need that as much as, if not more, than just our basic needs like food and survival needs being met. And so I'd encourage you to look at that study on Harlow's, Harlow study on the rhesus monkeys. And then finally, we really look at attachment. It comes from really John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth initially, and we move into Mary Main in the adult attachment area. But I'm going to talk today about terms that are just basic to attachment system theories. And really, this attachment theory is the next term. It's just the idea that we need to develop close, loving, protective bonds with other humans, and that we do so in order to survive, and that we have a wiring to do so, and that there really is an outcome in terms of our own relationship issues and things like that, based on what those early attachment bonds and systems look like. Okay, so attachment figures is the next term, and this is really just the main person that we are forming these attachment bonds to. Now, in the research, it's most often done with mothers, but so when I say things like maternal rejection, maternal dismissiveness, I'll come back to those. That is because the research is based on mothers, and historically speaking, mothers have been the primary source of especially early attachment with children. So we have this idea that an attachment figure is someone we create this relationship with. Now, attachment behaviors are really any sort of behavior that attempts to maintain connection or proximity with another figure that is our safe attachment bond, right? So it's any behavior we use to maintain closeness and maintain connection to that secure, ideal person that's taking care of us. Now, the issue that's so interesting, I think, about this is that there's been a huge trend in discussing codependency. And according to attachment theory, there really is no such thing as codependency in the attachment world. Now, codependency came out of substance abuse issues, and in that regard, I think many of us believe that it is very appropriate. But the idea is that if we're wired to connect in order to survive, how do we suddenly become these independent adults who are supposed to be a complete full self with no regard or no need for anyone else, and that we can just love ourselves on our own? Many of us believe that, we have to learn to love in a relationship, because if you think about it, a baby is just born. It doesn't learn to love as a result of just being born. It has to develop these bonds and attachment and psychological closeness as a result of the experience. And so the idea about adult attachment is that we take this into our adult lives. And so we always need some type of attachment. It may not be necessarily intimate or romantic, and there are varying forms of attachment. We're just talking about the primary attachment in this sort of concept right now. But the idea is that being codependent doesn't really exist. We need to be dependent on each other to survive. It's just a matter of how we do it, the ways we engage, the partners we choose, and things like that. I will revisit this idea when I go into adult attachment, but just know that this is an issue I think that's really worth a lot of conversation in terms of how do we learn to love, and are we as independent as we think we are? Being self-sufficient is great, but we do need each other. In fact, I think right now we're learning that more than ever. So then the next terms are activation and deactivation. Now, activation is really any behavior that attempts to engage in a closeness and a connection and a proximity and protection and secure base, which I'll come back to, with our attachment figures. And deactivation is when we decide that we can't get those needs met, and so we develop indifference or detachment to remove ourselves. And detachment is, as you can understand and make sense, it is not attaching. It is removing ourselves from those needs. Now, as part of this initial understanding of attachment, we have the strange situation, which is a very famous study I would really encourage you to check out. And it's a very long and complicated study in many regards, but I'm just going to sum it up for you. Basically, what happened was there was a researcher and a baby and a mom, and they basically took 8 different situations and studied what happens to the different types of caregiving responses when the researcher left the room based on the interactions between mom and baby. So in the main study, there were 3 different types they came up with: insecure, anxious, insecure, avoidant, and secure attachment. And later a 4th category called disorganized attachment was added. Now, the bottom line is kind of this. Basically, you have a baby and a mom and a researcher in a room. At some point, mom leaves. At some point, the researcher leaves. And they're just observing behind two-way mirrors and through note-taking what is happening to the babies. And they had already, like I said, observed the relationship of caregiving prior between mom and baby. And so what they found was that there was a group of babies who were basically secure. And what happened was when mom left the room, they were upset. But when she came back, they were, appropriately cuddled and soothed. And at some point, they were able to go back and explore, this comes back later, explore the toys in the room. So they could become, mom was a secure base, mom is safe, she's back, I'm good, I've calmed down, I can go out and explore the environment again. The next group of babies I'm just going to call anxious. These were the babies who were pretty clingy in general, and they tended to be really upset. And when mom came back to the room after leaving them, they had this push-pull, I love you, I hate you kind of dynamic going on, and they never went back to really fully exploring the room once this event, sort of traumatic event happened with mom leaving them alone in the room with a researcher. And they never went back to fully exploring the room, but they never really did explore the room as freely as the secure babies. The next category is the avoidant or insecure avoidant. I'm just going to call avoidant category. And this word is a strong word, but these were babies who had already sort of learned that mom doesn't necessarily know how to be there for me when I'm emotional. In fact, she doesn't really like negative emotional displays. And so when mom left the room, many of these babies just sort of followed her with their eyes, didn't even really melt down that much. When they came back, when mom came back, they were like, she's back. They kind of just had already deactivated their attachment system. But what was so fascinating was the research showed that even though on the surface they had learned not to show a lot of emotional expression, they had very high biological markers of stress, like cortisol levels and heart rates. All that was under the surface, but they had already learned to sort of shut that down on the outside. So you can imagine how this translates to adults who really hold in a lot of emotion that you don't see, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And like I said, we're going to come back to all of that in another section. And then we have disorganized. Now, initially, these were babies who didn't fit the categories of either insecure or anxious or secure. They had really disorganized. They had features of activation and deactivation, and they were really unorganized. They couldn't develop a system. At least the other babies kind of knew, like, okay, when I do this behavior, I can get these needs met. When I don't do that, I get these needs met. But these kids didn't have any system because it was so unpredictable. And that is really the hallmark. It is defined by consistent frightening behavior and frightened behavior, and creates a lot of, as you can imagine, different adult mental health issues, because all of these types of attachment are setting the stage for how we see ourselves and others in relationships. So I'll come back and summarize those in a minute. I'm going to keep going now with a few more terms you might hear as you learn about attachment. Okay, as I mentioned, a secure base, the idea of a secure base in an attachment world is that when I'm safe and secure, I know that you're protecting me, I can then go out and explore the world, right? Because as babies, we need to be soothed and comforted and cuddled. But we also need to begin to grow and develop and take risks and begin to walk and go out and explore the environment or go to preschool. We have to learn that we can go away and come back. And in an ideal relationship of attachment, we can do that. We know that mom is the safe, secure base that we can go out and explore the world, knowing that we can always come back to her. So that's the idea of a secure base, okay? That's why I was saying the irony is that, we really call it the dependency paradox, is that you have to be dependent on somebody in order to go out in the world and explore. So that goes back to that whole codependency myth, is that we do need to have some dependency in order to develop our best selves and to be really more well-rounded in how we engage in the world with ourselves and others. The next vocabulary word you'll hear is protest behaviors. Now, these are really any behaviors we engage in order to reconnect to our attachment source. So it can really be any activity that we use. It can be clinging and crying and being upset. It really is this way to try to get our needs met. And adults will do this by game playing, by shutting people out, by doing things that seem to provoke the other person to engage with them, but they're really just protest behaviors. We're trying to say, I don't like this, I don't like what you're doing, I need to reattach to you, and I'll find any means necessary to do that. Of course, babies are going to do it initially in a way that is pretty demanding, because that's how they get our attention, that they need to get their needs met. The next one is called, the next word you'll often hear is distancing strategies. These are really any attempts to move away from the attachment source. It can be emotional or physical, but they're just ways to distance ourselves from the actual attachment source. You also might hear the term seeking closeness. Seeking closeness. This is the idea of how we lean in to engage to get those needs met. Exploratory behavior. Exploratory behavior is really, like I said before, it's this idea that when we're safe and secure, we can go out and explore the world, or at least in an ideal scenario, that we need to have exploratory behavior in order to develop as adults. And in some ways, it's kind of the opposite of attachment, right? Because attachment, we're connecting and leaning in and getting soothed and cuddled and being close and reassured and feeling secure. And in exploratory behavior, we're going out in the world, taking risks and trying to sort of foster a greater sense of self and development by mastering our world, if you want to say it that way. Now we get into some words that are based on the root of maternal. So maternal responsiveness, which is the idea of how we respond, how available are we. Maternal rejection, which often we see where the primary caregiver, ideally was the mother, historically speaking, in terms of research, was not available. The child was deprived of a mothering figure, and or there was multiple losses of mothering figures, and they could never find a replacement. And so they often lose their ability to develop trust, to understand love and connection, because they never got a chance to get that secure connection. The other one is collaborative communication, and that is where we're really working together as a unit to communicate. We have this sort of system of mom and baby or environment where we can create connection in terms of reciprocal connection and love and understanding and bonding. Now, let me just really quickly give you the hallmark of the 4 types of attachment, which I'm going to come back to next. The next videos are going to be helping you go deeper into these issues to understand what the mothering looked like in each of these attachment experiences. And then I will eventually help you understand what that looks like in a mental health way. But let's just go back really quickly and just go through the hallmark of these main 4 styles, because that will be the next part, the next section of this first Who Are You Really mental health lab that I'm working on with you guys. Just to summarize, we have secure, avoidant, anxious, and disorganized. The hallmark of secure is just maternal responsiveness and attunement, that not always, but generally, the primary care figure was available and safe and able to adapt and be available to a baby in a way that helped them develop a sense of self, develop security, go out and explore the world, but also know that they're kind of held safely by this attachment system. The insecure attachment system is really defined by inconsistent maternal responsiveness and some rejection at times and some engagement at times, and really poor timing in terms of attunement. So a lot of misattunement. In terms of avoidant attachment, we have a lot of maternal rejection and a lot of deactivation of the attachment system, a lot of rejection around specifically negative emotions. And so this tends to set the stage for when I'm in my needy emotional stage, you don't tend to want to be with me or reinforce those needs. And so I'm better off when I'm independent and doing my own thing. And so that's kind of the root of that one. And then disorganization in terms of attachment is really this just chaotic The source of fear is also the source of safety, right? So you're frightening and you're frightened, and the person that's supposed to be my source of safety is also potentially someone who is terrorizing me, or who's scary, or who dissociates and isn't available. So it's more of an extreme misattunement, and timing in general all the way around is often not even available. Okay guys, so those are the main vocabulary words. I probably forgot a few. I may post some more down below if I forget, but those are the main vocabulary words associated with attachment and the attachment world. Now, what I'm going to start doing is I want you guys to hopefully, if you want to do this with me, understand that we come into the world in a certain way. We have certain experiences in terms of our attachment, and this really sets the stage for how we begin to look at ourselves and relationships, our sense of self, our understanding of, do people really show up for me? Who will be there for me? Are they reliable? Do I need to sort of get super protesty in terms of my behaviors to be seen or heard? And I'm going to help you guys use that in this next section as we move through attachment a little bit further. But then I'm going to help you understand in module 2 really is this idea of how do we use these experiences to then create labels for ourselves and what I call mission statements for how we live our lives in terms of, am I lovable? Am I not? Am I worthy? Am I safe? And all those things. And how we begin to see ourselves in those regards. With some exercises and some more knowledge, I'm hoping you can use those to help understand yourself more and your relationships. And as all of this will go into mental health and how to create a more empowering, more truer sense of self as you go into your life. Right now we're on this major pause and major trauma going on in the world, and I do believe that mental health is really at an all-time high for needs, but I think people are overwhelmed and scared, many afraid with resources to even get that support. And so I'm hoping these videos will at least help you set some stages and some groundwork for how to help your therapist understand you, help yourself understand you or your partner, and find ways to just truly live with more knowledge and freedom and self-love and empowerment in your life, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope you guys will stay safe and take good care. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to get more content. I hope you'll join me on this series. I'm super excited. As I'm saying, I'm calling these mental health labs. This first one is about who am I really, and it will have 6 sections. This first section is all about childhood, mothering styles, and attachment, and how that begins to set the stage for who you become in the world. So I hope you'll join me on the rest, and I'll see you next time. Thanks guys, stay safe and take care.